And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Wednesday, January 17th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Matt Belman, and we are brought to you by BetMGM. We had a 9-game slate on DraftKings earlier, but sadness struck the NBA. We are down to 8 games. Nothing changes on FanDuel. Sad to see. But we got to keep it moving, unfortunately. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow us both on Twitter. Matt, what's going on, man?
Nothing. Happy to be on here with you. Yeah, sad situation in Golden State. Had to figure something was really gone awry when they canceled the game, and unfortunately that's what happened. So prayers to everyone involved there. Excited to talk out this slate with you, though.
We also got the Pascal Siakam trade basically at the exact same time that we got the news that he had passed away. Not Pascal Siakam, but the Warriors coach. Thoughts on Pascal Siakam to the Indiana Pacers?
Honestly, it's a fun trade. Like, I get why people want to talk about it because NBA trade talk is awesome, but I don't think it really moves the needle in one way or the other. I like the addition of Siakam in Indiana because he's a good player. They probably gave up maybe a tad too much considering they had a lot of leverage in this trade situation, just because it had already been known that Siakam wasn't going to sign an extension with wherever he was dealt to. Indiana is on his short list of teams that he wants to stay with. So I think it was a good move for them. I don't think it makes them title contenders. And then Toronto hauling in picks, I respect it. How about you?
I'm not the biggest Siakam guy in the world, but it's really the only path for Indiana. They got a guy at their biggest need position. They they couldn't play the have salary cap room game. Nobody's taking a bag to go to Indiana. It's just you're either going to give 20 something million dollars for 1 year of Bruce Brown, and you could use that to get off of somebody, but no star is just going to go grab a ton of money before. Now, if this team overachieves, becomes good, it's a lot easier to throw money at a team that has Halliburton and Siakam already, and you come in and you're this third dude. But it's an unequivocal talent win. They're gaining 5-6 wins pretty easy onto their averages. I think they fit really well together. He steps right into a role that is, he can just take up 35, 36 minutes at the 4 that they were allocating to Obi Toppin, Jalen Smith. Insert whoever you want here. It looks a lot better in that regard. And I actually don't think they gave up as much as it seems. To give up Bruce Brown for him, Bruce Brown signed a 1+1 last year. It's not like Bruce Brown was this long-term play for Indy. But the 3 first-round picks that they gave up, 2 of them are this year. Neither one of them are earmarked for the lottery at this point. I think that's an interesting move. This isn't future draft capital where they have first-round picks where they can't make trades because they're blocked by the Stepien rule. They just have the ability to keep moving forward. It's 1 future obligation, 2 non-lottery picks at this particular moment. There's top 4 protection on that future 2026 pick. I don't think it sounds as bad as when you read it and it's Bruce Brown, 3 firsts for Pascal Siakam. I don't think the firsts are as good as it seems.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was doing a little deeper diving on it too and came out with that same conclusion. They're definitely not hamstrung like a team like Sacramento. And I think you're right. These are the type of moves that teams like Indiana have to make because stars aren't lining up to sign there. A little pushback on that point is that I do think that players, Halliburton is an intriguing guy to play with just because of the numbers that he can boost from everyone around him. So he is a nice drawing piece. And you're right. Siakam comes in, all of a sudden they're competitive in that top 4. I think they could be a nice, place. They've got a good roster now.
They do. I really like what they're starting to build. They didn't have to give up Walker in the deal, so they hold on.
I love Walker too. I love Walker. He is a piece for the future.
I assumed he had to go out in a deal like
Same.
this just as an extra asset. So doing that, I think, is really helpful. They still have a boatload of future assets that they could load up if they wanted to do something like this again and get a like a third, whatever you want to call a third guy in this situation. They can still do that, and that's not going to be all that. Like, we don't get stars to free agency anymore. This doesn't happen. Everybody takes the bag and worries about their trade 6 months after that. Like, it just, you don't see this bumper crop of free agents. And when you do, if Los Angeles, Miami, New York, if they have the free agent capital in that particular year, like, you are behind the eight ball in a big way if you got to try and convince people to come to Indiana. So sometimes you just have to pay for your assets in a different way. And I don't really hate the way the Pacers did it. They should be, if Pascal Siakam and Halliburton are healthy for most years, they're just going to be like a general fixture in the playoffs. They're just going to be there. There's not, like, as a 1-2 combo, that still ranks pretty highly in the rest of the East. There's not too many that are ahead of it.
No. Do you consider Siakam a star?
No, but like, it's a dumb way to say that, to me personally, saying no, because like, this is a guy that made an all NBA team. That's a pretty high level deal. Now, I think he made it a little bit because of positionality. I don't think that he is one of the 15 best NBA players each year. Now, moving forward, we don't have positional designations. Anybody can make anything it should be the 15 best players. However, we are going to lop off like 7 or 8 of those dudes for not playing enough games moving forward. So that balance is kind of weird. But no, he's probably in like the 20 to 25 range, just like off the top of my head without thinking about it, without lining everybody up. That's good. That's, like, I think they paid sort of the going rate for it. They didn't give up a first round pick that anybody's going to look at in the future and be like, oh shit, that's an asset. Like, the best that it's going to be is a 2026 pick. Something bad would really have to happen to Indiana for that to become the 5th pick in the draft, which is the best that it could ever be.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's certainly not a superstar. He's a fringe star. Like,
yeah,
could make the all-star team on any given year. Given how, considering how well he plays or doesn't play. I'm with you. Like, they didn't have to give up a lot. I do think that it's important for them that they signed Siakam here, which I'm sure that was a key part in why they were able to keep Walker and in why they made the deal. Like I said, they had a lot of leverage in this situation. So good for them to keep Walker and not give any picks of real substance.
He's going to get quite the bag to stay in Indiana. That's for sure.
For sure. And now that how the NBA is set up with the new salary cap, like, it's built for parity. So you don't have these super teams. When you get these super teams now, they're really hamstrung in what they can do going forward.
Slim Lancaster hit us with a super chat. He said, I took down the $8,500 mini max last night by 1/4 of a point. Thank you guys for the insightful information day in and day out. Good stuff, man. It's always good to see. I think I saw that tweet. So congrats, man. I know wins feel good.
They do. I don't remember.
That's true. Neither do I.
Yeah, I am ready.
Minnesota Timberwolves are 12-point favorites in Detroit, 222 total. We're seeing a little bit of love coming into this Minnesota side, but we are still waiting on a bit of news. We have the Q tag on Anthony Edwards, but everybody on the Detroit side is available, including Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscala. We've got about 15% ownership to Mike Conley and Rudy Gobert, around 20 to 25 on Edwards and Towns. What stands out most to you from Minnesota?
The price tags on Edwards, Towns, and Gobert, they all look good here. Just too cheap. Now, it's weird. This slate has a lot of the guys like in this range, a little underpriced, but still not a lot of good value to choose from. So you kind of got to be picky on who you use from this range, whether it's Towns, Zion. Those guys look similar to me. Anthony Edwards really stands out at 8,300, and Gobert really stands out at 7,100. How about you?
Anthony Edwards is the guy I'm getting to. I'm right there with the field. I'm somehow pretty light on Towns right now, but that is not something that I like. If I just look at Karl Anthony Towns, he grades out well. I think his ownership is very justified. I just don't appear to be getting to him all that much. He is a negative leverage play in the boom bust tool right now, so that might have a little bit to do with it. I'm actually getting to quite a bit of Jaden McDaniels in this moment. 4,800, small forward eligible. He plays like 32 minutes a night. Is he gonna fill up the box score? Nope. 0.66 DraftKings points per minute over the past 30 days, but he fills a position that's generally tough to fill. And we have some of these guys out there today that are pulling such like, I mean, I know Joe Ingles is 3,500 and that price matters. He's in 45% of lineups on an 8-game slate. John Isaac is pulling 28% ownership. Now I know he's 3,400, but as I look at those sorts of things, I feel like I can just get my value in a slightly different way and take the ownership discount with it. That said, it's not that those guys aren't good plays, but I think those are the kind of spots where I think I can be a little different in a large field GPP.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. So just for some substance there, Ingles is 3,500, projected for, like you said, 46% ownership, projected for 16 or 17 and a half DraftKings points. McDaniels, 3,200, projected for 12 DraftKings points, but only 2.5% owned. I love that call. Ingles coming in with massive negative leverage. I mean, not a guy that I want to play in that situation. McDaniels, again, you don't feel confident with it, but I like the call.
Is there anything else that's jumping out for Minnesota? Because we do have to worry about the fact that they might just kick the shit out of Detroit.
They definitely might, and I have to go back. I was looking at the wrong McDaniels. So the only thing I'll say to your point is that Ingles is this McDaniels is a different price tier.
Sure.
But I get not playing any of the Ingles guys and just like sticking in this tier and going with guys that are way less owned. So
yeah, like I'm just sort of avoiding the bottom of the 4K or like the 39, 38, 37, $3,600 barrel and just stepping it into like the 4K range. Because it's not as if we're inundated with like expensive payups. You've got Giannis at 11K. That's not too crazy. Luka, AD, 10-9 and 10K. Nobody else above 10K. I don't know if I need that salary right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. The guy that I like in this situation, you said Minnesota could just like beat their ass here. They easily could. I like Gobert a lot because if Detroit really struggles here, I think they're obviously going to be missing shots. He's going to be cleaning up a ton of that. Detroit gets destroyed by opposing big men. Still only 7,100. I think he's my favorite piece.
I like it. I mean, he should be live to just own the boards in this one if it's not going well for Detroit. And based on the ownership, doesn't look like people are going to be worried about getting to Detroit. 2% ownership to Alec Burks is the highest number on DraftKings. I don't have a single share of a Piston. I'm hoping they just don't participate.
Really hard to get to Detroit here on any consistent level, at least. Like, sure, they have guys you can use in tournaments, but really bad spot. Prices have now settled with no Cunningham. No thanks.
Yep. I have literally nothing else to add. They are GPP flyers at best. We got an ownership update 28 seconds ago. Ingles down to 36%. D'Angelo Russell now tied with Ingles at the top of the list. Then you get John Isaac coming in 4. Yeah, I'm going to avoid those dudes like the plague today. We'll see how well that works out. Today will be the day that chalk smashes. If I play Reggie Jackson, it's like, oh, he's got 18 fantasy points. Perfect. Gets in them. Yeah, no. Whoever I don't play today, that guy's going to smash. I've never known anything more in my life.
It's just really bad chalk in my mind. Like,
I agree.
I'm with you. So we'll get to it when we get there. So, yeah.
The Orlando Magic are 4-point dogs in Atlanta, 229 total. Same guys that are normally out for Orlando are out today. No Gary Harris, no Franz Wagner. For Atlanta, same situation. No DeAndre Hunter, no Wes Matthews. Lots of ownership coming into Orlando, which we already touched on. 36% to Ingles, 30 to John Isaac, who are both in the mid 3K range. And then you got about 15 to Goga Batadze, 15 to Paolo Banchero, around 10 to Chuma Okeke. I mean, we can finish off touching on it right now with Orlando. Like, these guys are heavily owned. John Isaac is pretty heavily negatively leveraged in the boom bust tool. Joe Ingles, his optimal rate is basically half of his ownership. Well, was half of his ownership. Now, basically like 2/3 of his ownership. These guys are just a little bit overowned. It's not that I'm not going to get to either one of them, but I don't feel like I need to make a stand and get over the field on a John Isaac or a Joe Ingles for today.
So on one hand, I don't really care about the ownership of like one specific player because there's so many ways to get different in your lineup. But on the other hand, when you have guys like this that are supreme chalk, for no other reason than we just don't have other value. I think I'd rather just build my lineups differently than play these guys. I'm just
Like
not
it's
worried
not like
about
Joe
that.
Ingles is stepping into 30 minutes in the starting lineup, and that's why everybody's getting to him. He's just still the bench dude.
I see very infrequently these guys getting any type of score that you need to have them. Much more frequently, I see them complete busting out.
Yep. Yeah, I don't like how many minutes do we really expect Joe Ingles to step out there and play? He came back and played 20. He's played 20 minutes in 2 of the 3 games that he's been back for. You know, he sat the second half of the back-to-back, and he hadn't played for weeks. Like, I don't expect Joe Ingles to just step in and play like all of a sudden off the bench and get a closing rotation and play like 26 minutes. That would be nuts to me.
Yeah, it's purely just a price and minutes thing, but I'm with you. Like, how many minutes are either of these guys going to play? I like Isaac a lot as a fantasy asset, but he's just too off injured to ever play big minutes. Clearly, that will never be the plan for him in the near or upcoming future at all.
Yeah.
I don't see how you can feel confident playing someone like that. You know, at the end of the day, you still only have 8 roster spots. And these tournaments, not just like the huge large fields, but like the 888 tonight. Like if Isaac puts up 15, which he's projected for 16 and a half, you're going to need to nut everything else to win. Like, you know, that's going to be a
somebody else is going to beat you with a different value play today for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
That said, I'm getting to a ton of Goga Batadze at 5K right now. I don't know how to stop it. I took a minute off of him. I only went to 25. I'm expecting him to start. He closed the last time that they played. He played 29 minutes. When it breaks well, I think he's going to play 28 minutes in this game, and then Wendell Carter Jr. is going to be the backup. He's been a fantasy point per minute guy all year. He's a 1.05 guy over the past 30 days. He's taking on an Atlanta team that's terrible defensively, bottom 5. They're 6th in pace. Every one of these things, including that 5K price tag, stand out to me, and yet 13% ownership is higher than it was earlier today, but he's the dude I like the most from Orlando.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. I have a hard time saying I like him significantly more than a guy like Thaddeus Young, who is about 1,000 cheaper and they project similarly. But I certainly like him more. Like if they were the same price, I would play Goga. And I think a lot of the reason people aren't getting to him is because they're not getting to this price range because they're spending down on Ingles and Isaac and spending up elsewhere.
That's a good point. Do you like anybody else here? Chumo, Kiki, getting to any interest in Banchero?
Yeah, I mean, Banchero looks good here. His price is now up there to where, like, it's the opposite of a couple guys we've talked about recently. So I'm not like overly excited about playing him, especially with, again, 8% chance of being optimal, 15% ownership. Just think he's coming in over-owned here. Not that he's a bad play. I just think there's other guys in that range that I like slightly more. That said, like I just said a little bit ago, like I don't really care about the ownership of one player. So if you like Banchero, it's not like 15% is that high owned. Like I don't really care about that.
No, you can very like even if we're talking about Ingles, you can very easily find a low owned pay up option to offset having the chalky Joe Ingles. There's nothing hard there at all. So I'm with you. The ownership of any one individual player carries very, very little weight.
For sure.
The Atlanta side exists. I'm about as uninterested as the public. Single-digit ownership to everybody. 9% to Onyeka Okongwu is the high mark, a $4,600 power forward center. Single digits across the board on FanDuel as well. Like I have 10% Jalen Johnson. I have 10% Trae Young. Those are stands in comparison to his ownership, but it's not like I'm getting to a lot of the Atlanta side. Orlando, 3rd defensively, middle of the pack in pace. It's not a great spot. Do you have anybody that stands out to you from the Hawks?
No, pricing is right, and they're in a bad matchup. So on an 8-game slate, hard to prioritize the Hawks. Same thing, Trae Young will say about a lot of other players on this slate. He can go out and score 60 DraftKings points on any given night, but not in a good spot and priced accordingly for his median outcome. So no priorities at all from Atlanta for me.
Well, then we can say that you guys should hit the like button to the 1,200 people that are here. And you should know that NBA Live Before Lock is coming up next. 6 p.m. start time, take you all the way up until 7. So you don't want to miss that. You don't even have to go anywhere. Stay right on this stream. It just continues right into live before lock. Also, use our avatar. Go to stokastic.com/avatar, grab our logo, put it on DraftKings, FanDuel, Owner's Box, Yahoo. Because if you finish in the top 3 of a contest with 5,000 or I just spun my microphone around. Top 3 in a contest of 5,000 or more, you can get 1 month of whatever you want at stokastic.com. If it's the NBA Sims package, that's projections, ownership, boom bust, the sim tool itself, the contest generator, lineup generator, premium Discord. You get it all. And all you have to do is tweet your result at StokasticHOF. Show us your lineup. Show us the contest you were in. We want to see it, and we want other people to see it as well. We want to celebrate you. So go to stokastic.com/avatar and grab that logo. San Antonio Spurs, 16-point dogs in Boston, 238 total. Now, we are waiting on a Q tag for Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, and Derek White. I don't have a great feel for what's happening there. San Antonio has basically everybody available. We don't know the official status on Dominic Barlow. It's not an injury. He might just be with the G League team. 14% ownership coming into Jeremy Sohan. Basically no one else getting any love. I don't have a ton of interest in San Antonio. If I'm going to get somebody, I just hope it's Wemby.
Yeah, that's the only guy I'm even slightly interested in here. I'm only playing one lineup tonight. I'm not going to play Wemby, but if I were multi-entering playing 150, I would definitely be over the 2.3% he's getting right now. It's risky for sure. He's still on that minutes restriction, but he has crushed this price tag a ton recently. Get up spot against Boston. He's the type of guy I'd want to be over the field on if I were multi-entering. I'm not, so I won't play him here. It's just really, really hard, and if you're playing one lineup or minimum amount of lineups tonight to lock a guy like Wemby in when he's not playing full minutes.
The Boston side is a little different. We've got 12% ownership coming into Peyton Pritchard at 4K, point guard, shooting guard. I think he's interesting at 12, a third of the ownership of Joe Ingles. 17% ownership coming into Drew Holiday, and then a scattered amount to everybody else from Boston. What I think is kind of interesting, one, is the price and positionality of Jason Tatum, small forward, power forward, 9,500, 8% owned. Even with all of those Q tags, I am very interested in Tatum. I have 24%. Love it. Love taking that stand. I am getting to Drew Holiday. I do think it's interesting that Drew Holiday is the one guy not listed in the props section on FanDuel. I don't know if that matters. It's a 7:30 start, so maybe none of this matters, but KP's got some points props. Jaylen Brown's got some points props. No sign of Drew Holiday. So I don't know what that is going to mean necessarily, but what do you like from Boston? Because the spot looks great.
I like all of them. Really hard to pinpoint right now without knowing who's officially going to be in or out, but Tatum looks great either way. Dipping price tag at 9,500. You said it, small forward and power forward eligibility, showing up with a little bit of leverage. This is one he's really low owned, under 8% owned for a guy like Tatum. Sign me up all day.
Yeah, I'm very, very happy to be 2 or 3xing the field. I want everybody to be in for Boston so that my stand doesn't change, because if we get those guys out, then maybe people are going to Tatum and I lose the thing that I actually like right now. Those are the situations that I end up hating the most. I want to continue getting the guys that I'm already getting. I don't want to lose the thing that I've attached my brain to.
I would have to think that all those guys would have to be out for Tatum to start pulling major ownership.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I'm getting to Drew. I'm getting to a little bit of Porzingis at 3% ownership. I'm getting over the field on Peyton Pritchard. I'm not surprised by that. I'm just going to other value plays that are going to be in and around that tier of dudes that are getting a ton of ownership. And if Peyton Pritchard happens to be one of those guys, fine. He might also pick up quite a bit more ownership if we end up getting somebody out for Boston.
Yeah, I like Porzingis from a contrarian standpoint here. Good spot. Another guy, reduced price tag from what we've seen recently. Big upside in this spot against a sloppy San Antonio team. So I think this is a game where he could have multiple stocks, and he's obviously got big upside at 7,800. So I like Porzingis here.
I don't want to undersell blowouts, because in theory, your projection model should have that taken into account with a minutes projection. But the Futon Bets said, you're not worried about Tatum seeing less minutes because of a blowout. And it's a question that comes up all the time, and I don't mean to point it out like this, but if that was a thing, you would just immediately run to the sports books and bet these dudes unders, but they're already taking that into account in betting markets. It's already being taken account in projection models and simulation models. So there's nothing extra for me to look at. If you're doing that, you're double counting things.
There's that, and there's also like how the question was phrased. Like, to me, am I concerned at all about Tatum not playing as many minutes because of a blowout? Yeah. But ultimately, like, I'm not doing anything with that for DFS because when I'm playing tournaments, I'm playing to win. And when I'm playing to win, I'm looking for upside. Tatum's upside is not changed because it might be a blowout. If it's not a blowout,
like if he just has an average day, I lost anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so I'm, again, like, yeah, am I worried about it? Sure. But I'm also worried about 10,000 other things I have no control over.
Yeah, like based on my projection model, accounting for it, no different than what the betting market looks like, then I have to assume I'm on the right track. Oh, the Milwaukee Bucks are 4-point favorites in Cleveland, 236 total. For Milwaukee, welcome back Jay Crowder. That's about all I've got to say about Jay Crowder. Revenge narrative against the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm guessing. Q tag on Karis LeVert on the opposite side. Still no Darius Garland. Still no Evan Mobley. So for Milwaukee, there is no ownership coming in here. 8% to Giannis. That is the high mark on DraftKings. Cleveland is 4th defensively, 25th in pace. This is a very bad spot for Milwaukee, a much better spot for Cleveland. Are you getting anything from Milwaukee? Is it just a situation where it's like, if I end up with Giannis or Dame, cool. Otherwise, I'm good.
I really, really like Giannis here. Cleveland has been playing a little bit faster since Garland and Mobley went down with their new lineup changes. Like, again, they're not a good matchup. Giannis has destroyed this matchup every time he's faced Cleveland recently, and I'm not playing him because of that. He's just too cheap. I think he should be closer to 12K here than 11K. He's coming in with nice leverage and the tools. Yeah. I really like, Giannis and Donovan Mitchell pairing. I like Mitchell more than I like Giannis, but I like both of them a lot.
I don't have a single share of anybody, but on paper, I wish I was getting to Giannis. I see him as a guy that I would like to have a bit more of at that ownership. It's basically just like Tatum. If he's going to be 8% owned, I'm always interested because he is a guy that can legitimately just break the slate. He can have a score that you don't have a choice. If you don't have it, you lose. That he is one of the guys that can do that. And that always scares me when he's not pulling a ton of ownership.
Same. On the flip side of that, I don't want to play Giannis if it forces me to play the Isaacs and Ingles of the world.
Agreed. And I think that's why I'm not getting there. Yes. I'm saving a couple extra $100 by moving up into that. Well, I'm losing a couple extra $100, getting out of that range and getting into the 4s. And it's getting me to 58% Donovan Mitchell, point guard, shooting guard, 9,600, projected for 14% ownership. Does everything for this team while these guys are out. Price tag works. And if that stops me from having to get the dregs of everything on this slate, so be it. But I want to get a lot of Donovan Mitchell. 16th in defense for Milwaukee, 4th in pace. It's better when Damian Lillard is in for the other team. It's just worse defense on the perimeter. Give me some Donovan Mitchell. KP
I love
out.
Mitchell. Oh, okay.
Drew Holiday in, Derek White out. So no Derek White, no Kristaps Porzingis. Drew Holiday is in. We're going to be getting a lot of Boston.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like who that immediately makes better. It makes everyone better. As far as Mitchell goes, I just have to run this by you.
Horford flies off the page. Sam Hauser is going to be getting enough minutes to become a value play now at 3,900. Pritchard is going to be way more popular. You're going to get Brown. You're going to get Drew even more than you already were. Like, we're going to be getting to a lot of Boston now. Sorry, go ahead for Cleveland.
No, you're fine. It was pertinent. So, who?
The guy that we just got done talking about? Giannis Antetokounmpo, out.
Wow.
So now it's Bobby Portis season, baby.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, so what I was going to say about Mitchell, because this point is no longer valid, but I really want to say it anyways. There was no chance he was coming in at only 15% owned, in my opinion, before that. Like, I'm thinking about a similar situation we had in Maxey. Like last week when Embiid was out, he was projected for similar ownership, and the higher dollar stuff came in like 30 to 40%. I'm not going to change anything because I trust the projections more than I trust myself. There's just a lot of nuance in DFS. And
Yeah.
everyone's looking at the same stuff, right? Like everyone likes Donovan Mitchell here. Now he'll even be higher on because Giannis is out. But as far as Milwaukee goes, I mean, Dame looks great now.
Yep.
Middleton, Brook Lope, they all look good.
Yeah. Bobby Portis, 5,800. I assume he's getting the start. You're popping him in for 28 minutes. You're getting a lot more of him at 5,800. Very, very different Milwaukee team now and very, very different Boston team. We will save that for Live Before Lock. Those guys will be able to break that down a little bit better once we get all of our data updated for those, because those are obviously two high-level changes that don't just get made in 10 seconds. So do you like anything else for Cleveland? They're obviously going to look a little bit better now. Just when Giannis isn't on the floor on the opposite side, the matchup is just going to be more competitive. Do you want to get to anybody else? Because I add Isaac Okoro to my list of guys with relatively low price tags that aren't $3,500 jabrones.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he fits that build. Like, could easily outscore Ingles here. And yeah, he's a little more expensive, but you can just flip the build a little bit. So with that, Jarrett Allen, I think, looks a little bit better, but it's really Mitchell or bust for me.
I agree. And that you're seeing that in the ownership. And it could look even better. If Karis LeVert gets ruled out, you like Donovan Mitchell even more, especially with Giannis out at that point, because it's not as difficult of a defensive matchup as you would have gotten. And they're not a good defense anyway.
And if LeVert's out, does then a guy like Sam Merrill, I mean, he obviously looks a little better then. And wonder if Craig Porter, it's weird. I'm not sure what exactly they're doing with Craig Porter, but if he somehow
I think we start getting to Merrill at 4,600.
Yeah, he looks like a fine value then.
Anything else for the Cavs?
Nope.
Well, that was an interesting couple minutes. Whole slate changed. Whole slate, completely different. Well, if you like sports betting, maybe you could take advantage of it by using BetMGM. If you click the link in the description or the one that pops up in chat, all you got to do is bet $5 and you will get $158 in bonus bets. It's Super Bowl 58 coming up. They added an extra 100 to it. You get two $50 free bets and you get a $58 bonus bet. The worst case scenario, take advantage of this deal if you're in a legal sports betting state, not New York, Puerto Rico, or Nevada. The worst case scenario is you are out $5 of your own money. You lose your first bet and you lose 3 of the bonus bets. That's your worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you hit 1 or 2 of those bonus bets and you're starting off with a really nice bankroll. All you got to do is sign up using that link and make that $5 bet. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 or over. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Based on chat, Anthony Edwards is in.
He is in.
So that helps. That helps. Houston Rockets. Huh?
Didn't need Edwards being out after all that.
Nope. Now I don't want any more news.
Same.
Houston Rockets are 6-point dogs in New York, 221 total. Ownership coming into 3 guys in double digits. We've got Jalen Green, 5,800 projected for 16% ownership. Jabari Smith is at 10%. Fred VanVleet just shy of it at 8%. And then Alperen Şengün, 7,900, 21% owned. I think it's pretty clear that Şengün is the best option for Houston. That price tag looks really nice, sub 8K, but the ownership is already there. I'm getting there. I'm right around the field with it. Do you want to get to anything else from Houston? Because this is not a premier DFS matchup.
It's not, but the prices stand out a little bit. I mean,
yeah,
kind of reminds me of Minnesota. Minnesota's in the better spot on paper. Expect this game to be more competitive, though. So, no, I don't think anything's wrong with the ownership. I don't really want to follow all of it, but I do think that getting some Houston exposure is probably not a bad idea. Not a must, but they look good price considered, even though the matchup's not great.
Yeah, I only have like a little bit of the rest of these guys. Couple shares of Jalen Green, couple shares of Jabari Smith, but it's Şengün is the dude that I'm getting to the most, which is an interesting move here against New York. On the Knicks side, we are still waiting on their news. That could actually have another big trickle-down effect to the rest of this slate. Knicks have a Q tag on Jalen Brunson and a Q tag on Josh Hart. Brunson has missed the previous 2 games. We got about 10% ownership to Randall, Hart, and Brunson right now. The guy I want the most in this game, I just need to play. I think Jalen Brunson for 8,400 looks awesome. He definitely looks a little bit different to me now than he did 20 minutes ago, now that Damian Lillard is also on his corner. But I think that'll probably bring his ownership down, if anything. And then he'll look like an interesting GPP play to me. But I like him at 8,400.
Yeah, I think you're right on there. Like, if nothing else, will look like a nice pivot off of what will presumably be a chalky Lillard. I'm with you. Little hesitant. It's like an ankle injury, right?
I think so, yeah.
So,
Left calf contusion.
okay. So probably just better than an ankle injury for my prospects of when he plays that he'll be able to go full go. He's like 900 cheaper, 700 cheaper than he was last week. So
Yeah.
I'm totally
He was
about it.
9,100 on the 9th.
I think you can totally talk yourself into like builds tonight that really focus on like the $700 to $8,500 range of guys that were previously 85 to 9,500 like a week ago.
Yeah, that range is slowly but surely getting even more loaded.
Yes,
which I like. I like this slate a lot. I don't mind getting to Josh Hart at 4,600. I don't mind getting a little bit of Randall, although it's really hard at 8,900 when Karl Anthony Towns is sitting out there in a matchup against Detroit at a better price tag than Randall. They're not all that dissimilar. But I don't want much else here from New York. Houston 9th in D rating. They're 18th in pace. This is a more defensive matchup, a relatively slow matchup. It's hard to want to get to a ton, but that could change if these guys if both of them get ruled out, then we're looking at like a $3,700 Quentin Grimes and having to have a real conversation.
Yeah, potentially. Wish Miles McBride hadn't been priced up yet, but he is, so no thanks there. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see on that news.
Oh my God. Futon bets. You need to just put the keyboard down and learn some shit for the hour that you're here, because you're 0 for 2. Giannis is out. He's just out. I don't even know why you would think he's playing. The man is out. Unbelievable. Miami Heat, 3.5-point favorites in Toronto. This is not what we had earlier today, but Toronto changed the complexion of their team a little bit. Miami has 15% ownership coming into Kyle Lowry, who I believe has a 6.5-point prop today, which is basically the same as Doug McDermott's for today, if you want any sort of reference. 10% ownership coming into Bam. You certainly won't feel bad there. What do you want to do with a $7,800 Jimmy Butler?
He looks like a good play. I mean, he's another one of these guys in that range that looks good. Like, talked about the $7,500 to $8,500 range. He fits right in there. I don't think he stands out as like a must play or anything, especially with the news that we've gotten trickle in, but he's too cheap for his median outcome, I think. How about you?
I don't have any, but I really want to. I don't like, he came back and played 40 minutes. They didn't even like ease him back in. They just threw him directly into the deep end of the pool. He played 40.3 minutes after missing the previous 7 games. He played 1 game before that. He had missed a giant chunk of time. Like, I don't know what the plan is here, but like, you have to assume he can just play like normal. Yeah, but like he can play 40. Even like I gave him 35 if you include the OT. Like, you know, you call it 35 without OT. I didn't think he'd do that either.
Same. No, I'm with you. I wasn't trying to diminish your point at all.
No,
just
no,
that, like, just that. Yeah, I mean, 40 in regulation.
That helps for people to know.
It would be crazy if he played 40 in regulation, but yeah, he's too cheap. Now, Miami does have Hero and Bam. So, like, I think they're certainly going to have plenty of nights where Butler just isn't going to do that much during the regular season, but he's priced like that now. Like, this is another guy that's routinely, I'm going to look right now, his average salary this season is $8,600. So there you go.
I mean, you're talking no difference to the actual rotation that he's a part of, but we're talking about like a $700 or $800 deduction in his price. That's reduction in his price. That's not the word, not deduction, reduction down to 7,800. It's crazy to see him just come in unowned.
He's coming in with really nice leverage too. I like that call a lot.
He certainly is. And like, as always, you know, if you want to get to any Bam Adebayo, by all means, like, he's just talented, but 9K, pretty healthy.
It's weird that I don't know if we've ever seen this before. Butler, he's the same price as Hero, but just for this comment, I'm going to say he's the cheapest. He's the cheapest of Hero, Bam, and Butler.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't see that all that frequently, if ever. Crazy. Crazy. Also crazy, the Toronto Raptors, who are going to be moving forward now without Pascal Siakam. And spoiler alert, Bruce Brown not going to be active for this one for Toronto. And if I had to guess, probably not a Raptor for very long.
No way he's a Raptor.
No, I don't know why they would keep it. They can turn him around into a first round pick, probably to a contender. You're not playing for anything else. 33% ownership coming into a $5,500 Dennis Schroeder, 20 to RJ Barrett, 20 to Emmanuel Quickly, 10-ish to Gary Trent, Scotty Barnes, Thad Young, 6 to Jonte Porter. Are we really doing this? Who's starting? Are they going to play him in the second half, or is he going to pick up a foul and they take him out in 10 seconds?
That's the worst, right? When they take him out after 4 fouls and then never put him back in. Like, why'd you even take him out then? I mean, I don't know who they're going to start, what they're going to do here. The ownership's there on all these guys. I get it. I'll say this about Schroeder. I don't like the ownership that he's getting, but I'd rather play a guy like that over like the Ingles and Isaacs of the world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like there's just so much to go around. They're freeing up 36 minutes and a ton of usage in comparison to what some of these other guys are. I'm more than okay getting to Schroeder. I'm not getting a ton of him, but I don't have any aversion to it. He certainly looks way better than he did before. The only downside really is that Miami is the second slowest team in the league, but I'm getting to Quickly. I'm getting to Porter, to Jonte Porter over Thad Young. Assuming they run him back out there again, I'll take the guy at half the ownership at basically the same price. To me, that's just an easy one to do. They could also just run Thad Young out there for a bundle. They could play Chris Boucher more. Like, none of us should be confident in what they're going to do today. There's no reason we should be. The guy I like the most, though, give me RJ Barrett, 6,600. He's crossing shooting guard and small forward. And with Siakam leaving that void of usage, I think RJ Barrett is the first guy primed and ready to step in and take that a little bit. Usage has been down since he got to Toronto compared to where he was. I bet today is going to feel like a day where he can get it back a little bit.
I like the Barrett call. The real talking point for me, and I want to get your take on this, is what to do with Scotty Barnes. So,
yeah,
I think you get the bump up with Siakam gone, obviously. I mean,
sure,
of course he does. But I'm worried that he's still at least fairly priced, if not overpriced, for Quickly and Barrett now there, especially Quickly. Yeah. Like, Quickly is someone who has the ball in his hands a lot.
Yeah, it's not OG Anunoby there anymore. They brought in two guys that have the ball a lot more. Like, it's a bonus now that Siakam's not there, but I don't even know if this brings him back to neutral after all of this is done. Remove OG Anunoby, remove Pascal Siakam, add Quickly, add Barrett. Like, I think that's probably relatively neutral from a usage perspective.
If anything, I think it's a slight downgrade still. Like, okay, we see this similarly.
Yeah. Now that can change. I'm not confident that it does. 26% usage rate for Scotty Barnes with Pascal Siakam off the floor this year. You know, a little bit higher than what you're expecting. I think that all makes sense. But he's 8,400 already. Like, we've got a pretty loaded $8,400 crop of teams that aren't playing the second slowest team in basketball today.
I'm surprised that he's getting like 3 times the ownership a guy like Butler is, and he's more expensive.
That's a good point. I mean, yeah, like he's obviously a better per minute dude, but you're also saving an extra $1,000 by doing it.
And he's a better per minute dude. Like, when you factor in the all season, like, he has not been great recently. And again, you don't want to take too much of that, like, and forget what he did earlier. But I think there are reasons why you're seeing his numbers down.
Is Dennis Schroeder over-owned right now? I mean, we have him significantly over-owned. 17% optimal, 33% ownership. That seems aggressive.
Yeah, I feel like he's just getting this ownership because he should be 6K instead of 5,500. Fine getting away from it. But at the end of the day, like, the goal in DFS or NBA, any DFS isn't just to avoid the chalk. Like, so I don't mind playing a guy like Schroeder. Like I said, a couple minutes ago, I feel more comfortable with him than I do guys like Ingles and Isaac. Sure, the other guys are cheaper, but Schroeder has not been playing well and he's still been fine. So, like, I think that at 5,500, he's just a solid cog in the machine. I'm fine playing him. I'm fine not playing him personally.
19.5% usage rate in 213 minutes with Pascal Siakam off the floor and Scotty Barnes being available in that game.
With the Giannis news, I'm just not sure he's as needed as he was, though.
No, like when we get updated ownership, I would not be surprised at all. Like we're going to see everything change pretty dramatically with everything that's happened. So ownership numbers that we're going to quote on this show need to be taken with like a little bit of a grain of salt until we know that everything has been updated across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else for Toronto?
No, all these guys are in play. Interested to see what their starting lineup will be. I think between Thad Young and Porter, one of them probably ends up being a very good play tonight.
Yep. Guys, I'm going to stop talking about the NBA for a second. We're going to talk a little NFL. If you want to sign up for our NFL Sims Max package for the rest of the season, it'll take you all the way through the Super Bowl. Very simply, click the link in chat or the one that pops up in the description. I said that in reverse, but you know what I mean. Use the promo code DRIVE when you do it. $99 gets you everything on the NFL side. Our projections, our ownership, our top stacks tool for main slates. You also get all of this stuff for the showdown slates. You get the Sims tool itself for both main slates, showdown slates, whatever. Contest generator, post-contest evaluation, Discord. And if you get in right now, you've got till a little bit into tomorrow. I don't know what time golf kicks off, but you also get 1 week of our PGA Sims tool. You'll get that through Sunday. So you want to get in before lock. Today is Wednesday. I assume locks tomorrow. I don't know what time that is, but if you're trying to get in and use that PGA tool for the main slate, you want to sign up now. Again, $99 gets you the NFL Sims Max package all the way through the Super Bowl. Charlotte Hornets, 11.5%. Yeah, 11.5 point dogs percent. I'm a moron today. In New Orleans, 229 total. There is no love coming into this Charlotte team. Now, we do have some news that we're waiting on. We've got a Q tag on Bryce McGowan's. We've got a Q tag on Brandon Miller. We've got a Q tag on Frank Ntilikina. Still no Mark Williams. Still no Gordon Hayward. 8% ownership to PJ Washington is the highest owned dude on either DraftKings or FanDuel previously. And I don't think anything got better for Charlotte with all of this news. So do you want to play any of the Hornets?
The Hornets are intriguing to me here. They don't stand out from like a median projection outcome, but they stand out from their upside and price tags. LaMelo Ball, I wrote about him. I wrote up him today in the Contrarian article. He's played in 2 games since he came back. He's been really good. Now his minutes haven't been ultra high, but both those games have gotten kind of blowouty. So, wondering if he's on a minutes limit or if he's just full go and they haven't played close games. Under 1% owned here. I know you guys had a decent conversation about LaMelo this morning. I'm still buying LaMelo. I know that the Halliburton hype is real, but I think a big thing that most people don't talk about that you mentioned is LaMelo is big. So while he is not good defensively, there's a ton of room for growth there, like on a good team. So I'm still buying LaMelo. That doesn't mean anything for tonight, but he's a guy that can put up 60 if he's playing full minutes in a close game and no one's getting to him. So intrigued, if nothing else.
Same. Looks like a great guy to get to in a GPP today. Like you're obviously not cash gaming LaMelo Ball, but you would not be surprised at all if Charlotte wins this game outright. It's probably because LaMelo Ball had a bit of a day.
100%. Or the other guy that I also wrote up is Terry Rozier. Now, you obviously like Rozier a lot more when LaMelo's out, but he's 1,300 cheaper than he was last week because LaMelo's out. Like, he's 7,500 now. He hasn't been below 8K in like 2 months. So, again, no one's going to go there. LaMelo's in. I get it. Rozier doesn't look as good from a median projection standpoint, but his upside has not changed. And playing LaMelo and Rozier together on a slate like this, probably suboptimal because there's so many good plays. But there are also scenarios where Charlotte just scores 140 here, and both of them
Yeah.
have really good games. Not the likeliest outcome, but the price tags are conducive enough where I think playing one of them is, in play, if nothing else, in tournaments.
Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart are both on track to play. I say stuff like this a lot on slates like this, and it was sort of what you were just talking about with Charlotte playing well. Detroit's a 12-point dog. San Antonio's a 16-point dog. That probably came down now with those Boston guys out, so call it like 12, 13, 14, whatever. Charlotte, 11.5-point dogs. Just based on the odds, the expectation is that one of those underdogs win outright today. Like,
Yeah,
just
would you say that?
Like that's a thing that you need to remember. One of those teams is statistically likely to win. At least one of them is statistically likely to just simply win outright. That's why you can't just immediately brush one of these teams under the rug.
100% agreed.
The New Orleans Pelicans on the opposite side have Zion Williamson getting 10% ownership and no one else getting anything. They are going to be sad to see that Kyra Lewis no longer with the team. He got shipped out today. Don't think that's going to make much of a difference, but I think you can get to Zion. I think that's the reason he's getting some ownership. Obviously, if you want to play Brandon Ingram or CJ McConnell, by all means, but I find the Pelicans side of this game harder to get to than the Charlotte side.
Same, just pricing. They're healthy. Zion, he's a little too cheap here. He reminds me, or he looks just like Karl-Anthony Towns. Like they're both a little bit too cheap, both in really good spots. Other than that, though, big men destroy Charlotte. So J-Val has some tournament upside for me here. But with how he's priced compared to where other guys are priced, it's hard for me to prioritize him over a guy like Gobert. So, yeah, I think it's Zion or nothing from New Orleans. But even Zion, I'm not really excited about that play at all.
Now, I have 2% of Zion. I think that range is just loaded. Now, he should smash Charlotte. They don't have any way to slow him down, but all of these guys for the Pelicans have just sort of been blah overall. I don't know. Weird team. Also, New Orleans Pelicans per dunks and threes, which I go to every single day. They are 7th in net rating right now. That's way better than I think anybody probably thinks. They're 24-17.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised to hear they're that high in net rating, but this is another team with a very talented roster.
You ready to close this one out?
Yeah, just real quick. Even with Siakam, you would agree that New Orleans has a better roster than Indiana?
It's close.
It is close.
It's close.
Because I like the secondary pieces on New Orleans, but now all of a sudden, I think keeping Walker, and again, that's just projecting in my eyes, but was huge for them. The reason I say New Orleans is because of their secondary guys like Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, that are good NBA players, if not great NBA players.
The problem is they have the albatross CJ McCollum contract on their books right now, and I don't know how the hell they get off of that.
That's fair. I'm not really including when I say how good their roster is. I still consider him a good NBA player. Now, if you're talking about a desired job, I think Indiana would be more desiring than New Orleans.
Man, it's really close. They're kind of similar teams. They're both in not ideal markets. Yeah, I don't know. That one's tough. It's close. New Orleans just has really good future assets, and I think that's the more appealing piece of it all.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Dallas Mavericks 4-point dogs in LA, 244 total. We still need the biggest piece of news out of everything. Luka Doncic is questionable. Derek Jones Jr. probable. Grant Williams probable. But Josh Green is out. We got that one earlier today. Single-digit ownership to everybody on Dallas before. I was getting 20% Luka. I was cool with that. I also was getting 20% ownership to $3,500 power forward center Maxi Kleber as a pivot off of the other $3,500 garbage that was pulling a lot of ownership. Now we have Peyton Pritchard. Now we have Sam Hauser. The whole slate is different than what we had before. But what do you want to do with Dallas here? How do you feel about Luka if he's in? How do you feel about Kyrie if he's out?
I really like Luka if he's in. It's kind of like Giannis. He's just too cheap, under 11K. Really like him if he's in. Really like Irving and Hardaway Jr. if he's out. I like the Kleber call. I don't think it's needed anymore. It might be, but I like playing. You could basically say anyone over Joe Ingles, and I'd like it. So I'm with the Kleber call. But really, it's Luka if he's in, and the other two guys if he's out. I do think that Kyrie and Hardaway are like more priorities if Luka's out than Luka himself if he's in. But I'm not sure any of them are like must plays, just considering how deep this slate got with no Giannis now.
I hope I can get to a bunch of Luka at 10-9 if he's in.
Same.
I really do.
The
I like the
problem
matchup.
The problem for me though is like a guy like Dame. He looks better to me now than Luka if he's in, or Kyrie if Luka's out. So nothing to do with upside, but just on a median standpoint, I like Dame more than either of those guys. Can, depending on the situation. How about you?
Right now, I don't know.
Fair.
So much has changed that I don't really have a great concept of what all of this is going to look like when we rerun everything. Like that, those changes, like no Giannis and those two Boston guys out, like really just changed up everything in a way that we weren't ready for.
Yeah, it really did, especially like while we were talking about it. Just real quick on like a completely opposite point. So I don't know, a couple weeks ago we did a show. It was like when Cam Whitmore started to play more, and we both talked about him and liked him. He ended up being awful that slate. But I couldn't believe how high owned he was. Like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, there's a lot of nuance in this, and you have to kind of have an idea of where the field's going to go, given on who's getting talked up, et cetera, et cetera. I think that stuff matters.
Maybe I need to just start talking up some other people. Talk up my versions of Cam Whitmore for today. Damn. That day sucked because then he's played like a shit ton since then in a couple other games. I was like, we got the one game where he didn't.
Oh, he destroyed the next game.
It was so dumb. So dumb. We closed this out with the Lakers. 36% ownership coming into a 6K D'Angelo Russell. At least that was earlier today. AD was getting some love. LeBron getting some love. Torian Prince getting some love. What do you like the most here from the Lakers? I'm a big fan of AD in this spot at 10K, given that eligibility. I have no problem getting to LeBron. And D'Angelo Russell is just in a completely different role here without Cam Reddish.
Yeah, it's AD for me as the top guy. I don't think it's even close. Like, he looks like a really, really solid spend up option. I like Russell here. I think he's getting too much love, especially now that we've got more news. It changes the slate though, so maybe Russell doesn't end up getting as much love as he was. I'm sure he'll still be popular, but he's another guy. Like, I'm fine playing him, but I'm also fine not playing him. I don't look at him as a must when, they're basically all healthy, at least all the guys that matter, Davis, Reeves, and LeBron.
It's just a minutes thing. Like, he's going to, if Reddish is out for a bit, D'Angelo Russell is going to be like 68, 69, 7K in a game or two. You kind of grab it now if you get the opportunity. But I like getting some. I don't know if I like getting big time ownership, but it will matter a little bit less because he's not going to be 36% owned after everything we just saw. I'd like to get AD. I'd like to get LeBron. I've got some Torian Prince. I think that goes away. Another dude in that 4,400 range playing, 30 something minutes. The Lakers version of Jaden McDaniels for me on Minnesota. Just a guy that's going to play the minutes and be out there that is also dog shit on a per minute basis.
I guess I'll also throw out Christian Wood, 4,200.
Sure.
Again, not a guy you feel comfortable with, very high variance, but averaging 25 plus DraftKings points over the past 4 games at 4,200, you'll take that. So I'll shout him out.
Anything else here?
No. For some reason, when I think of LaMelo Ball, I think of Wembanyama. Like, I always incorporate those two, and I don't know why.
I don't know. Got to get those two playing together. LaMelo would throw some wild ass lobs to him, man. Whew.
That would really be fun. Yeah,
it really would. It really would. One of those two guys need to start thinking about who they're going to pair up with.
Yeah. Well, I was just reading yesterday.
Guy.
Trae Young is open to the idea of playing with Wembanyama. I mean,
no shit.
Right.
I'm open to the idea of sleeping with Rachel McAdams.
Yeah.
Alrighty, folks, hit that like button. Don't go anywhere. NBA Live Before Lock coming up next. We'll talk to you later.
What is happening, everybody? It is Wednesday night, and we've got a doozy of a show because there's just been, I don't even know how to talk about the amount of injury news that we have that's come out over the course of the day. And there's also the Pascal Siakam trade. So there is a lot to get into here. So no time for any kind of dilly-dallying at the top of the show, guys. Just like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got Eric here. We've got Jordan, who looks nice and handsome, which for some reason he thinks is an insult. And then also Lee is here manning the projections. He's going to be hopping in to also talk about some of the news as it happens, which is never ending on today's slate. So guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also shout out to BetMGM, sponsoring the show today. BetMGM, where if you guys have not taken advantage of this deal by now, we've been talking about it on this show and on other shows for the last couple of weeks. You sign up at BetMGM using the link we have below. It's the easiest way that you guys possibly could make some money out there to build your bankroll. You sign up at BetMGM using the link we have below. You bet $5, and they give you $158 in bonus bets. Look at how excited Ben Roz is on the screen right there. Just all schmarmy looking, pointing at the offer, telling you guys, take advantage of it, you absolute doofuses. If you haven't already, what are you waiting for? $5, $158 in bonus bets. Sign up using the link below. Take advantage now. If anybody that you know or yourself has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. Eric, what is happening? What do you make of all this news on the slate?
Yeah, I mean, what a cluster, you know what? I mean, this is just kind of a wild run out. When the Giannis one came on my phone, I thought it was like a mistake because it dropped with all the Boston stuff. And I had to double check it twice and then just realized that, all right, well, this is going to be a different slate than I anticipated. That's for sure.
Houston, and I meant to say the Magic starting lineup, but I almost said Houston because he's in the starting lineup. But a weird starting five for the Orlando Magic: Suggs, Houston, Okeke, Boncaro, as well as a Goga Batadze in there. So that is something that was really an expected starting five here. One other thing I noticed about this slate, I don't know if you picked up on this, Eric. I got the notification from DraftKings that Giannis had been ruled out before even like Underdog or anybody else on Twitter. I got that sent to my phone really quickly from the DK app that he'd been ruled out. So that's the first time it's ever happened. They were that quick ahead of the news. But kind of as a rundown for you guys, first, the amount of players that are still questionable that matter for today. And it is a handful of them. We've got, well, Anthony Simon's not on the slate, but still, key player is questionable for the slate. Karis LeVert is questionable. Brandon Miller is questionable. Gary Trent is questionable, which is going to be important that Gary Trent is questionable when you consider the Toronto Raptors trade that they made today and that they're going to be shorthanded. And then, of course, players who have already been ruled out. We've got Giannis out. Pascal Siakam mentioned that he's been traded. And it's just a whole host of moving parts that we have for the slate today, Eric. And by the way, not to mention, I forgot Luka questionable as well. He's
that guy.
Games, but remains questionable for tonight. So just right off the bat here, Eric, which piece of questionable news is most important to your lineups that you really feel like we need for tonight?
Gary Trent, which is stupid to say. Here's the thing, like Dallas, now the prices reflect a lot more of like Luka being out. So if Luka ends up being in, I feel like he's a true 50-50 questionable. I actually lean maybe towards him being in this spot against the Lakers early game in LA. I think it's just easier for me to just kind of write over that team for the most part outside of Luka, who I'd want to have a lot of exposure to. I increased my exposure to Anthony Davis here. It gives me kind of more of a pathway, even though he's down to $10,000 for whatever reason. I think Gary Trent ends up being the guy, though, because if he's out, you lose Pascal Siakam, and you don't have a lot of the rates that are changing like crazy. We haven't accumulated enough sample size. I worked through that in my article today with Quickly, Dennis Schroeder, or not Quickly and RJ Barrett, excuse me, coming over from the Knicks. But what you do is you just open up a whole holy host of minutes, and I don't know who ends up being the starter between Porter and Thad Young. I don't know how those minutes break down, but all I know is something is going to look really, really good outside of just the very, very obvious to me, Scotty Barnes at 8,400. And yet doesn't feel like everybody's getting to him the way that I was expecting.
Well, the problem is there's so many guys that look good, especially around that price range, that it's kind of hard to really say like one guy is going to be the guy for the slate.
And it's a 226 total against Miami, which doesn't help either, but
yeah, so I've got lineups. I'm going to have to rerun lineups again for that Orlando Magic starting lineup because different than what I expected it to be. But if I look at players who are in the price range of Scotty Barnes, we've got Anthony Edwards, who looks good today because he's underpriced at $8,300. We got Damian Lillard is $8,600. That's something a lot of people are going to have to consider. Do you want to play Damian Lillard without Giannis Antetokounmpo, or do you want to play Scotty Barnes with Pascal Siakam out of the mix? And for me, Eric, the answer is going to be Dame, which is why also, like, for me, I don't get to a ton of Scotty Barnes, certainly in my player pool and somebody who makes sense, but there's a lot of guys priced around him that look quite good.
Going back to your question was what piece of questionable news that's still pending is going to shape my lineups the most? What other piece of questionable news do you think is going to shape your lineups the most?
Yeah, so looking at my lineups, it's actually probably going to be Luka, just because I have a little chunk of Luka right now. And if he's out, that goes by the wayside, and then I have to find other players to pay up for.
Yeah, but again, I think just because of the timing, that is the only game, I guess, going at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. So maybe it becomes a little bit of an issue when you start getting down to it. You only have 2 games that occur after that 7:30 p.m. Eastern time window. But like you can turn Luka into Anthony Davis, and you're not going to completely be blindsided by any means. I mean, you're talking about in terms of the highest projection on the slate, Luka's 1, Anthony Davis is 2, ever so slightly behind Donovan Mitchell, who I really like for tournaments. But yeah, I think for me, just for what's going to happen to my lineups, Gary Trent has more of a trickle down effect.
Yeah, totally reasonable. For me personally, it's going to be Luka, but obviously, if Gary Trent is ruled out, then we have to navigate the Toronto Raptors rotation once again and figure out where some of those minutes are going to end up going. And already, super chat that is coming. Actually, we've got a couple here from Slim Lancaster. First, he says he took down the 8.5K mini max last night by a quarter of a point. A quarter of a point he won last night. He says, thank you guys for the insightful information day in and day out. Slim Lancaster. Love to see you winning a tournament last night, and congratulations. And then he has a follow-up where he's asking us for our favorite options for DK tiers. So let's go ahead and look at tiers for tonight. And I've got lineups built for this, although I haven't looked too deep at each individual tier to know what's going to stand out. But starting at tier 1, this would have been Giannis earlier in the day, but pretty easy for it to not be Giannis now. Instead, I go with Anthony Davis. Do you have tiers lineups in front of you by chance?
I do.
AD in tier 1 for you?
Yep.
Tier 2. So if I look at tier 2, that is another one that's fairly easy for me. Jason Tatum, considering the players who are out for Boston.
That's easy for you. I like Donovan Mitchell a ton.
I like Mitchell on the slate as well. Not as much as I like Tatum, though. So
gotcha.
Difference of opinion there. Tier 3 for me, that is going to be Paulo Banchero.
Yeah. Going to be, man, we are on different pages today. I like both Adebayo and Randall more.
Yeah, I would have really liked Randall on this slate if Brunson was ruled out, but now that's probable. Less so. But Paulo Banchero for me in tier 3. Tier 4, this one, I'm going to assume we're on the same page. Damian Lillard.
Yes, sir.
All right. Dame in tier 4. Tier 5, this is another one that I find to be fairly close. I'm going to go with Şengün in tier 5. It's a close one, though, between
Jared Allen for me, yeah.
And then tier 6, that is going to be Chris Middleton. There was scenarios earlier in the day where I would have said Karl Anthony Towns, especially if Anthony Edwards was out. Edwards was questionable, but now he's going to be playing. So Chris Middleton for me with Giannis out.
Same.
And then that's it. Those are all the tiers. Those are all 6 of them. So Slim Lancaster, thank you very much for the super chat. We do appreciate it. And then I'm going to go and check to see if we have anything in the Discord channel as far as questions go. And if we are all caught up on these, which there's one question to answer, and then we'll go to Lee and we'll see what he makes of some of the news that is broken over the course of the day. But first, Captain Akella wants to know where favorite single entry play of the night is, Eric. And there's so many different ways we could take this, but where do you like going for single entry?
I mean, there are so many good pieces of chalk now, and there's so many like questionable things that I think just from a Toronto aspect, like what that starting 5 ends up being. So like I will go to Scotty Barnes once again. I'm a little bit surprised. Generally what happens after one of these big trades and there's just like this big opening, you see everybody gravitate towards who the next presumed stud would be. Scotty Barnes is 1.23 along on the floor here with Pascal Siakam, DraftKings points per minute, up to 1.27, 1.29 baseline, maybe 1.35 going forward here. I understand Quickly and Schroeder on the floor together are not going to exactly help his assist rate the way that we would otherwise want. And that's usually been like the go-to thing here is, you know, like the Washington spot where you get somebody like Schroeder out, you see ball handling duty for Scotty Barnes playing point or something like that. With Quickly there, it's a little bit more difficult and it might be muted, but there is no doubt that Pascal Siakam, being the highest usage guy on this team at 26% this season, is going to change to Scotty Barnes. And for me, that's kind of where I want to be early on the shot, like the volume, the potential volume that could be there, especially with Jakob Poeltl out there. I mean, this could be Scotty Barnes walking into a lot of usage here from the get-go, especially with distributors around him and Quickly and Schroeder. So I like him at 10%, 12%, no matter where you're looking. I am very, very here for it.
Let me see. Who do I want to go to? Because we always get this question with Captain Akella. So I was expecting it coming into the show. Bobby Portis was actually projected for sub 10% ownership. So I was like, that's going to be. So I was like, that's going to be the guy for me. And now he is, latest ownership update. He is not anymore. With that said, he's only 20% owned, and I am quite a bit overweight to the field on Bobby Portis.
Yep.
So if we look at the front court for the Milwaukee Bucks. And there's no Giannis tonight. Does that mean Bobby Portis starts? Potentially, but he doesn't have to. It does open up extra playing time for Bobby Portis, as well as extra usage in the minutes that he would have played alongside Giannis. Not that there's a massive amount of overlap in their playing time, but there is still some. So Bobby Portis is somebody who, even though his ownership has come up from the projection it was at before, where it was sub 10%, now it's closer to 20%, I still think Bobby Portis is being a little bit overlooked by the field, because typically on slates where Bobby Portis is playing without Giannis, he ends up being, like a 40, 50% owned type of guy. Now, the reason he isn't is because of how much value there is on the slate and the amount of players that are ruled out and players that could still be ruled out. But Portis is currently my third most rostered player on the slate, and that is not quite how the field is viewing him. So Bobby Portis, for me, he stands to gain a bunch in the absence of Giannis. Let's get back to another super chat here. We'll answer this, and then we will go to Lee after I answer this one more super chat, because we've got Jade Tuong is asking us favorite player at each position on FanDuel, and thanks. Eric, do you have FanDuel lineups built out or just DraftKings?
Just DraftKings today.
All right, so I'll answer this, no problem. So for me at point guard, Damian Lillard. There's nothing in here that I think is going to massively surprise anybody. But point guard for me, that is Damian Lillard on FanDuel. Shooting guard, Chris Middleton. Very correlated situations there. There's no Giannis for the team. Lots of usage available in Milwaukee. Small forward, that is going to be RJ Barrett for me. I mean, technically it is Chris Middleton, but I already said him at shooting guard. So small forward, RJ Barrett, same sort of situation. Toronto Raptors, there's no Pascal Siakam. Extra playing time and extra usage available for other wing players. And RJ Barrett, somebody who I expect to benefit from that. Power forward, Bobby Portis, who I mentioned before. Although actually I might go a little bit, because I want to go Bobby Portis at center. So I'll go with Thaddeus Young at power forward for now. But there is also here some expectation for me that Thaddeus Young ends up in the starting lineup and plays extended minutes, depending on what the starting lineup is for Toronto. That could certainly change. But Thaddeus Young to me looks really strong over on FanDuel. We've got Thad Young with the power forward eligibility at $4,400. He should be somebody who at the very least plays extra minutes in the absence of Siakam. And whatever happened with Jonte Porter last slate, it was very bizarre. So he starts the game. He's going well too, Eric. I think he scored 13 fantasy points in the first quarter of that game.
Yep.
And then in the second quarter, and doesn't really do too much at first, then picks up like 3 personal fouls over the course of 30 seconds. They send him to the bench. First 15 seconds of the third quarter, picks up a 4th personal foul. They send him to the bench. He never checks back in. So clearly there's a little bit of a distrust between the coaching staff in Toronto and Jonte Porter. That does make me think that they go back to Thaddeus Young for tonight. But we shall see if that actually does end up being the case once the starting lineup comes out. And then Gary Trent Jr., another player who could potentially impact that there. But Jordan, let's bring in Lee here now. And let's ask Lee some questions, starting with the key news on the slate. And then after that, we'll also hit on some of the more minutia, like the Orlando Magic starting lineup. But Lee, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks, who do you see the minutes going to that Giannis loses out on? And then I think it's fairly easy for us to say that, like, hey, Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton pick up extra usage. But what I'm really interested in some of the cheap guys that you view as picking up minutes to become viable options.
Yeah, so the real key here is that Jay Crowder is technically back. So we're not really sure what he's going to look like, but I'm pretty conservative right now with his minutes. But if he was to like surprisingly come in and start, if they wanted to, Portis off the off the bench, that would be really, really surprising. But I mean, really, the minutes come in to like Bobby Portis, Malik Beasley gets from like high 20s to like low 30s. It's not really about even the minutes as much as it's about the usage. So like with situations like these in particular, you really want to be considering the fact that it's like, even if everybody else is the same minutes, when Giannis is gone, it's like minus 50% usage or whatever is just available to everybody else, right? And so it doesn't even matter if you change like Lillard's minutes or whatever. He's just like plus 15%. And you see that like reflected in the props as well.
Yeah, and then also, I mean, it's evident if you just look at some of the on-off court numbers for the Milwaukee Bucks this year, the usage is quite a bit different looking. And Damian Lillard, who takes a step back with his role on Milwaukee relative to Portland, but that changes when Giannis is off the court. So Damian Lillard this year, 36.2% usage rate in minutes played without Giannis, 35.9% for Chris Middleton. So massive jumps, kind of what you were alluding to there. And then the other one that I want to ask you about is this new starting lineup for the Orlando Magic, where we've got Caleb Houston moving into the starting lineup. And it's just overall a different one that, at least when I expect, maybe you were expecting this Orlando Magic starting lineup, Lee, but I was certainly not. which cheap guys from Orlando stand out to you? Because we've been seeing all day guys like Joe Ingles and Jonathan Isaac projected for ownership.
Yeah, see, so I don't love this situation, right? Because it's very clear that it's very much in any of the stuff can kind of change. And so like they're still playing Okiki in like Houston or whatever, but like they're garbage players, like actually garbage players. And so like if Joe Ingles gets hot, he'll get some extra minutes. If Isaac doesn't break his ankle in the first 3 minutes, he might get to 16 or something like that, right? And so it's like you just have to make these considerations. And then of course there's like 15 guards. So like Fultz is getting minutes, Anthony's getting minutes, Black's getting minutes, and it's just not a great place to be. So like when I see Isaac chalk, I think I'm rating him fairly, right? I think I'm rating him fairly, but he's like Taco Bell chalk, right? Like he's really cheap, and in 4 hours you may or may not regret it. So like, I mean, it's just not pretty.
So that was fantastic.
The other thing I want to ask you about the Orlando Magic, then, as you're doing some of these projections and you're saying that, there's a lot of range of outcomes we could get to from Orlando. If you're running lineups through our Sims right now, Lee, and if anyone wants to sign up for any of the packages at stochastic.com, you get access to obviously the data and tools, but also our Discord channel where myself, Lee, and Rich, we're in there, pretty much all night answering your guys' questions. One of the perks of having a Stochastic membership is, Lee, if you were running lineups through the Sims and you were getting to a whole bunch of Joe Ingles or Jonathan Isaac right now, would you try to maybe do an ROI downgrade to some of those players to mute some of the exposure because of the variance that you're expecting in the playing time?
Yeah, definitely. And you have to like think in your mind what the shape of these people's variance is. So not every player is built the same. Isaac doesn't get minutes variance, right? He only gets production variance because right now it's very clear to me the coach doesn't want to ever go above 16 minutes. He doesn't have that 30-minute upside that people talk about all the time, right? So like you actually have to take that variance away from him, right? And so he'd like to be a perfect example of somebody you should downgrade.
All right, so we will be going back to Lee if any more news breaks, which seems like there's a pretty good chance that is going to end up happening over the course of the show. One thing that I'm definitely going to disagree with a little bit, though, is there's always an unexpected upside to a Taco Bell, because even if you do get the diarrhea 4 hours later, that's a diet plan for some people. And I think that more people need to be considering that when they go to Taco Bell, where is that healthy eating? No, but if you eat enough of it and it gives you food poisoning, guess what? You lost yourself some weight. And if there's a way that you could eat a bunch of fast food and lose weight, I think that's something that's being overlooked by the people. Eric, going back to you now, because we got to get you incorporated in here as well. So, Eric, anything that Lee said there really change any of your opinion on any players or any spots on the slate?
No, he said a beautiful thing and you ruined it. So that was well done by you. Sounds like every Live Before Lock you've ever been on. So that was an enjoyable deal. I think what's really interesting to me is always like with the Milwaukee Bucks specifically, like there are a lot of iterations where we think that they're going to do this or we think they're going to start that. And it's Andre Jackson Jr. this time or it's Marion Beauchamp this time. Doesn't really matter who it is. Like, I don't think I'm going to really have any interest in a starter. Jay Crowder, I doubt that there's any kind of a pronounced minutes upside. I'm sure, a Pat Connaughton can cut into that enough. But for me, it's just so clearly Damian Lillard, Bobby Portis, and Brook Lopez. Chris Middleton is still a little uncomfortable. I mean, everything you just said about a minutes cap, 3,300. I know that the price is very different, 7,600 there for him. And he's coming in lower owned there, but yeah, there's not going to be a minutes upside to 36 more than likely here. He's been capped right around 33 nonstop. I'm just going to have him in for 31 and a half, 32 from now until forever, it feels like. So that's kind of the one guy that, he's at 8.6% ownership. I'd be surprised if he was that low. We'll see kind of when it comes to the flip of it. But that's one guy that I'm either going to be really happy that I have him because he's single digit owned, or I'm going to be really mad because he ends up getting steamed up to like 25%. So I'm just thinking through Milwaukee and what people are doing right now with their lineups and what they're recognizing based on ownership projections. And I'm just trying to model my lineups in a way where I have a ton of upside. I'm utilizing the Sims tool. I'm able to mute some of the guys that feel like flimsy chalk, Taco Bell chalk. I'm just going to use that forever now. And now we have an opportunity to just get to the mid-range studs here, these 7K guys, 8K guys that are coming in underutilized. I've talked about Barnes. And obviously, Middleton, paying attention to his ownership in the next 32 minutes matters a big, it's going to matter in a big chunk of my lineups.
Let's go ahead and get back to some of your guys' super chats. And don't forget, if you're in Discord and you have questions for us at me, so we can answer some of those over the course of the show. But right here, Corey Shea wants to know, what DK forwards do we like for 4,200 and under? All right, 4,200 and under.
Sam Hauser.
Yeah, Sam Hauser's the obvious one, right?
Well, you asked.
No, I'm agreeing with you. So in terms of guys who I really like 4,200 under, it's Sam Hauser. You know, we talked about some of the flimsy chalk that exists on the Orlando Magic with Lee before. So if you want to take a shot or two on a Jonathan Isaac or on Joe Ingles, they are viable options. But like, Sam Hauser's a core piece of my lineups.
For what it's worth, this is the identical starting lineup that Orlando rolled out on Monday. It's just that it wasn't on the main slate.
It is the lineup they rolled out, but I don't think it means that the minutes are going to be the same.
Oh, totally. I'm completely with you. I'm just saying that, like, I wasn't caught off guard by it by any means. It's more of like, it's such a cluster of figuring out anybody's minutes outside of Isaac, who's probably the easiest guy to project minutes for.
16.
16. Yeah, exactly. It's like, don't really need to worry about any Jonathan Isaac in my life.
So you have 0% of him.
I have no Jonathan Isaac.
Okay. I don't have like a ton of him or anything, but he's in lineups for me.
He was going to be, and then it would appear that I have a Peyton Pritchard problem, which, again, there's a joke to be made somewhere. I'll let chat do it.
What is the problem? What is the Peyton Pritchard problem?
I don't know. You tell me, Greg.
I don't know what your lineups look like. You're having some sort of issues with Peyton Pritchard.
I didn't even want to talk about it. Jordan, I knew it. I knew it was coming right away.
So Peyton Pritchard's my most rostered player on the entire slate. Are you saying he's not exotic or something like that?
Yeah, I have 90% of him. I'm just saying.
Do you wish it was higher?
I'm never going to be able to financially recover from this.
So the best value guard we have on the slate is Peyton Pritchard. The best value forward we have on the slate is Sam Hauser, two extremely exotic fellas from the Boston area. And what you have to like about them is just the amount of play. Well, two things. First, the amount of players that are out for the Boston Celtics, because they are resting some guys because of the fact that they're playing the San Antonio Spurs tonight. And this is how lopsided the game is expected to be, even though the Celtics ruled out a couple of guys that are obviously very important to the team. You know, no Derek White tonight, no Kristaps Porzingis. The spread only moved by 1 point, Eric. It went from Boston minus 16 to Boston minus 15 because he can only be favored reasonably by so much in an NBA game. But in the absence of Derek White and the absence of Kristaps Porzingis, the two guys that are most in line to pick up extra minutes are going to be Sam Hauser in the front court and then Peyton Pritchard in the backcourt. So I don't think you have a problem. I think you got a solution to this slate.
Gary Trent in.
Gary Trent is in. So that is not something else we have to worry about for tonight. We got the dumb starting lineup for the Detroit Pistons, which is Hayes, Ivy, Bogdanovich, Stewart, and Duran. But yeah, so Boston Celtics, it is the team overall. Here's a way to talk about this as well. Do you have more exposure to the Boston Celtics or the Milwaukee Bucks right now?
The Celtics.
It is the Celtics for me as well. Now, with that said, all my top rostered players, my 5 most exposed players are Pritchard, Hauser, Portis, Drew Holiday, Damian Lillard. How far down do you have to go down your exposures until you find somebody who's not from Boston or Milwaukee?
Not terribly far. Donovan Mitchell.
Okay. Oh, and then after that, I have Jason Tatum, Brooke Lopez, Al Horford, Jaylen Brown as I scroll down.
Yeah, I had a feeling. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, God, Jingle all the way. I got to get Jingles out of here. This is a lot of Jingles too.
Yeah, I'm getting so much exposure to Boston, Milwaukee. The other player who I get that is not from that game that I have a decent amount of, and I didn't think I was going to get a ton of because I was underweight to D'Angelo Russell earlier in the day. But that ended up not being the case as we got closer to lock here. The main reason being is that this morning when Josh and I did the strategy show, D'Lo was projected for about 40% ownership. But now it's a much more manageable number because of the amount of other value that's opened up. So it's weird. Like more value has come into play, which ultimately got me to more of D'Angelo Russell because his ownership has dropped. He's, nearly like half his own now as he was earlier in the day. So D'Angelo Russell is the other guy who I get a good chunk of. But those are all the players that I have in north of 25% of lineups. It is basically everybody from Boston, Milwaukee, and D'Angelo Russell.
Yep. So the D'Lo play, I mean, it's weird that I actually like D'Lo on any slate. But once he was in the starting lineup against Utah, it just felt like, oh, they're just saying defense be damned. We need to actually score buckets with guys that aren't just Anthony Davis. And so LeBron, he's always been so good in the distribution role, and like having D'Angelo Russell be just a knockdown shooter, that has more utility than having him out there doing anything else. And yeah, the assists have come along for the ride. He's still going to handle the ball and be in that pick and roll at the top of the key, and have some specific utility there too. But I mean, 32.5 minutes of a guy who's a 1.05 fantasy point per minute guy, even sharing floors with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, this bodes well for him. So 6K, I'm with you.
Now let's go ahead and get back to some of your guys' questions, because I see some of those piling up here. And the next one is from my filler arc, who's asking us, Drew, OG Anunoby, or Hartenstein? Yeah, that is Drew Holiday today, just by a landslide.
Yeah, Drew Holiday is awfully, awfully good. Also, I mean, we still don't. No, yeah, never mind. Continue on.
No, you could finish that thought.
Nope. It was going to go on another tangent. We don't have time. We have too much to do.
Okay. Next question here. James Magruder. James Magruder wants to know the best play at each position, including our favorite centers. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at the players that I have the most exposure to here, and kind of tip my hand before. It's going to be a lot of Celtics and Milwaukee Bucks guys. Point guard, Peyton Pritchard. That is Pritchard for you, I assume.
Yeah, Carol Baskin.
I can't imagine you have another point guard north of 90% in your lineup.
I do not, actually. I do not.
and then shooting guard is Drew Holiday for me.
Drew Holiday for me.
Small forward, that is going to be Sam Hauser.
Is it still Sam Hauser for me as I ran this? It is Jaylen Brown for me.
Power forward, that is Jason Tatum for me.
It is Al Horford for me.
And then center is Bobby Portis for myself.
And it is Bobby Portis for me too. And Brook Lopez, pretty close.
Yeah, and then just because he wants us to talk overall about the centers we're getting the most of. So 3 players with center eligibility that are north of 25% of my lineups, James, are Bobby Portis, Brook Lopez, Al Horford. Portis and Lopez both benefiting from the absence of Giannis. Al Horford primarily benefiting from the absence of Porzingis.
Beautiful.
Now let's see what else we have in here. This one is Luke Stone, who says, who do we think gets the biggest usage bump after the Siakam trade? I'm playing a lot more quickly than I feel comfortable with. Yeah, so let's go ahead and look at some of the on-off court numbers for Toronto this year.
And I did a ton of it already earlier today. So
one thing that's going to be hard about this is we don't have a lot of data, right? Because in terms of the existing players, we don't really know exactly what RJ Barrett and what Emmanuel quickly look like without Siakam. So we have to make some educated guesses as far as where we think the usage is going to end up going. But I'll look at some of the on and off court numbers here. We'll take Siakam off the court, and then we will also take Anunoby off the court and see what that does.
See, I'm a little bit like against doing some of that, mainly because you have to take OG off, then you have to take Jakob Poeltl off, then you have to take Precious Achiuwa off, and like at a certain point, I like taking Siakam off and then looking at kind of like Jakob Poeltl baseline, 16.1% usage on the season. I'm just kind of lumping him, Jonte Porter, Thaddeus Young. They're all 15, 16% usage. I'm just kind of like calling that neutral. And so when you remove Siakam, there's no doubt Scotty Barnes is going to take the biggest jump up with the sample size we have, and you're going to feel the most comfortable about it. And I do think that kind of maintains over Emmanuel Quickley, as much as I've been banging the drum for Emmanuel Quickley being somebody that any team should go out and get, because, you know, once he got unleashed, you knew he was going to be good. He's gotten in foul trouble in a couple of these spots. And also, I didn't see them having him share the floor as much with Dennis Schroeder as they have been. But I think it kind of cannibalizes both of them in terms of usage. I think there's just no doubt that Scotty Barnes emerging the way that he has, the way that the coaching staff talks about him, you know, when he was defending him, saying that he wasn't getting calls, you know, he's the best young player in the league. He's going to be the face of the NBA, things like that. There's no doubt that Scotty Barnes is your franchise guy now going forward. I think he is like by far the easiest answer to say, yes, he's going to lead the team in usage.
Yeah, if we go ahead and we look at some of the fantasy production this year with Siakam and Anunoby off the court, it does still tell us, I mean, there's a decent sample size for, and Eric has fallen into the abyss there. There is a decent sample size on Scotty Barnes this year. Scotty Barnes has played over 300 minutes with both Siakam and Anunoby off the court, 1.19 DraftKings points per minute in those occasions. We have Emmanuel Quickley at 1.18 fantasy points per minute. And that's only in 64 minutes, though, since Anunoby and Siakam have been off the court. But I have to agree with Eric here, which is if we're just going to, from a logic standpoint, say who benefits the most in terms of who's going to have the most usage for the Toronto Raptors when there is no Pascal Siakam for the team, I agree with you. It's going to be Scotty Barnes.
Yep, there we go.
Next question here is from Olrat14. He said, no one mentioned Brissett. Is he worth rostering? Do you have any exposure to O'Shea Brissett?
Do you remember O'Shea Brissett Day the other day and everybody's just victory lapping after a quarter or whatever that was? And I don't think anything came of that. I don't think he ended up optimal. We were both kind of sweating bullets in that one. He ended up with 18
fantasy points, and I think 13 of them were in the first quarter. It was I'm close, if not exactly right.
Yeah, 21 minutes has been the high point for him here. There have been situations where they've had more than just Porzingis whiteout. I feel like in a couple of those as well. I'm not surprised if they go to some O'Shea Brissett. I mean, there's some volatility there in what the minutes could be. 15 minutes is fine. If you put him in at 15 and you get a couple shares, or this is a 15 spread. You want to say this is a blowout and he plays all the blowout run. He's a flat 3K. I get it, but we've got him in for 10 minutes. There's volatility on both sides of it where he barely sees the floor at all. He plays 15, 16 minutes. So if you think that that's necessary on a slate that has tons of guys that are projecting really well, and you want to use a lineup spot on O'Shea Brissett, go at it. Have fun. He's 3K. That can do a lot for you. But I think the downside outweighs the upside.
There's a big opportunity cost. There's a lot of value on the slate. A lot of players that project fairly well. And look at this. Jordan's getting ahead of himself. He's just playing the nuke of the night animation. Don't worry. We'll get to it in a second here, Jordan. He's trying to force our hand here. We'll do the nuke of the night in a second.
I want to know Lee's... shit. This freaking camera. My God. All right. Whatever. We're just going back to the old school camera because that's what we're doing. I need to call Sony or something. This is getting ridiculous. But I want to know Lee's nuke of the night with no context. I doubt he watches and understands what we're talking about here. But I would love to know Lee's nuke of the night and what he thinks that is and what it should be.
So I actually watch all the time. So I watch you guys make fools of yourselves on TV all the time.
Thank you.
There
he does, because Lee messages me during the show while we're talking. He doesn't message you, Eric, because he doesn't really give a shit about your opinion. But Lee messages me all the time during shows to let me know, hey, here's my input on what you're talking about, and we talk about minutes. We message back and forth. So I'm aware Lee watches the shows. Sorry, Lee. Nuke of the night. Eric really wants to know what we have in mind.
So yeah, I think that this Boston Spurs game is really interesting, specifically for Luke Cornett. Wembanyama is like a giant, and I don't know, 6'9" Al Horford, I don't see being a great situation. So I am actually going to be playing a decent amount of Cornett tonight.
Oh, all right.
My dude.
We're going way off the
board. I will say one time Lee did reach out and he absolutely let it be known that we needed to jam Najee Marshall and that it was his highest owned player. I'm pretty sure that was the correct assumption. Najee crushed. You remember that night. Those were beautiful
48
times.
Fantasy points or something stupid.
Yeah, you are smarter than most, Mr. B. Calicore.
All right. By the way,
I just think it's a good spot.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. This is somebody that was popping in the Sims tool a little bit. And, I try not to override the data too much, but I'm really glad you talked about him specifically because he was a guy that I was getting in an uncomfortable amount of lineups. And I was trying to decide if I needed to shift some towards Thad Young, have it kind of on the back burner, have some swappability there a half hour after the show locks and, kind of solidify my lineups then. But I think I'm gonna stick with you there. I think Luke Cornett is kind of a fun piece. Do you think there's a chance he starts over Horford?
I actually do think that there's a chance that he actually starts next to Horford.
Oh my!
Instead of Sam Hauser.
Yeah, that would be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, because you might want just Cornett to go out there and be on Wemby.
We'll see. The starting lineup will probably be out in 15, 20 minutes. We'll see what it is. I do have exposure to Luke Cornett as of now. I'm about double the field on him. That's even with the expectation that he'd be coming off the bench. So a sneaky call there by Lee. And Eric, do you have a nuke of the night as well? Or are you just going to attach yourself like a barnacle to Lee?
Fuck off. That's not very nice to me or to Lee. Okay. So you zip it good. We're going Donovan Mitchell. I don't understand against Milwaukee in this spot now, especially with as much Milwaukee exposure as we are going to have, you and I are both going to have, that everybody's going to have, how we have a Donovan Mitchell at just 11%. And Damian Lillard is 3x in terms of what the ownership is. There's still a 6 fantasy point chasm between the two of them. I know there's also $1,000, so that exists, but Donovan Mitchell has point guard, shooting guard eligibility, so that increases the profile a little bit. He is the Cleveland run back, so to speak, if you were looking for that. And the usage is just out of control. 31.9% usage now on the season, with room for it to just continue to go ever so slightly up here in the absence of one Evan Mobley. I know a lot of the guys that they bring out on the floor to come help out, those are going to be pieces, but like, especially if you get Karis LeVert out here as well, my dear God, this could be an enjoyable experience to watch. 35%, 40% usage. Donovan Mitchell just go back and forth with Lillard. I don't know how you don't love that.
I'm trying to find a pay up option that I'm like well overweight to that isn't picking up that much ownership at this point. I think I might know who it is that I'm going to go to. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go Anthony Edwards at $8,300. He is 17% owned right now. I'm fairly overweight to Anthony Edwards. It's a wrong price point for him. Also, in an elite matchup against the Detroit Pistons. So Anthony Edwards should never be $8,300 in this matchup. He was expected to be massive talk when Josh and I were doing the show this morning. What happens? You know, the players get ruled out, other value opens up, and then people's lineups end up getting allocated to other spots. But I mean, we look at some of the recent games where the Timberwolves have been competitive, and the game might not be competitive against the Detroit Pistons, but in games they have been competitive. Last time I feel like 38 minutes against the Clippers. We saw an overtime game against the Celtics where we got 46 minutes out of Anthony Edwards. And another thing too is a lot of the matchups that the Timberwolves have been in, I was trying to figure out why it was, Eric, that Karl-Anthony Towns, as cheapest as we've seen him all year, Anthony Edwards, why he's as cheap as we've seen him all year. You look at the recent matchups that they've had, they've been brutal. They've played nothing but difficult matchups lately, Minnesota. Last game against the Clippers. All right, they played against Portland before that. Easy game, except it was a blowout. So all the starters played limited minutes. But then before that, at Boston, at Orlando, at Dallas, at Houston, at the Knicks. These are very not fantasy-friendly matchups. And as a result, we saw guys like Towns, like Edwards, not have their normal production. Now their prices have come all the way down. So Edwards at $8,300. I actually do think he's one of the most mispriced players on the slate, but people don't think of him that way because there isn't value on Minnesota in the same way that there are on some of the other teams.
People also are like, oh, the blowout potential of this spot and like that spot. And it's like Boston's 15-point favorites. I mean, if you want to talk blowout issues, talk about your boy Jason Tatum there, where I'm on the under of his 45.5 PRA. But I understand obviously I understand Jason Tatum is going to be a major beneficiary of everything here. The team already goes through him. So it's not like I'm saying that that's the issue, but there's things like that exist where, yeah, Anthony Edwards, you can make that same case, but you're getting it at a much cheaper price point. Another phenomenal matchup. Not another one, the first in a while for sure for my Minnesota Timberwolves. So don't mind that. I'm right around 20%, and I think I'm just going to kind of keep it there. I like it.
The next question we have here, it is from Sean. Sean wants to know who is our favorite player at each position on DK. So we did get a similar question before, but Eric, you want to just roll through yours and I'll do mine right after?
Yep. So point guard is definitely Peyton Pritchard by an absolute landslide. Then Drew Holiday at shooting guard. I have at small forward Jaylen Brown. At power forward, I have Al Horford, and at center, it is Bobby Portis.
For myself, and a lot of overlap with Eric, point guard Peyton Pritchard, shooting guard Drew Holiday, small forward Sam Hauser, power forward Jason Tatum, and then center Bobby Portis. So those are the players that I'm getting the most of at each spot. And then James Magruder wants to know who our favorite $5,100 under player is to roster and utility spot. So it can be any player for $5,100 or less. Which way do you go there, Eric?
Any player 5,100 or less. Let's go.
It's going to be somebody way cheaper than 5,100.
It is, and that's always the shitty part about this question. Actually, it's not terribly off. Goga Bitadze, but I'm not a big fan of that.
Let's see.
5K.
Is it Goga for me? It is Goga for me. By the way, I do have Goga in 18% of my lineup, so I could get behind that. Goga Bitadze, who Josh and I were talking about him this morning. His advanced numbers are crazy this year. He's
I know.
legitimately been one of the best starting centers in the league.
Number 2 defensive center in the league behind Rudy Gobert. Him and Isaiah Hartenstein have been going back and forth between 2 and 3 for a while. Wild to think they both were like 16-minute-a-game centers at the beginning of this season.
If people are wondering why Donovan Mitchell's usage has been so high lately, the Cavs starting lineup is Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, and Jared Allen, which is why every single game we see Donovan Mitchell now with a usage rate of like 34, 35%.
I'm saying it's got room to go. And imagine, so did we get Karis LeVert news, by the way? Did I just miss that? Did that come in at all?
So Karis LeVert, last I saw, is questionable, and I don't think that has changed.
Okay, just wanted to double check.
LeVert is, still questionable.
Okay.
I know where you're going with this, though. If there is no Karis LeVert today,
Craig Porter,
I don't know how much higher Donovan Mitchell's usage could go, but it wouldn't go lower because Karis LeVert is out.
Well, hang on. Would we try to be getting to a crazy, ridiculous amount of Craig Porter Jr., or what would the game plan be there?
Let's see. So
Sam Merrill.
Sam Merrill, he's kind of gone in. He's gone into our lives. Oh,
yeah. Sam Merrill would probably be the one, unfortunately.
That is very unfortunate. You know why? Because I've never gotten Sam Merrill right once in my life. I will probably have to revisit in that event. But yeah, Sam Merrill truly owns my soul. He is not. He's the most exotic player that has ever walked this earth.
Oh, he's as exotic as it gets. I don't know what you're talking about. He's as exotic as it gets.
We got breaks a wrist when I play him, and then he's fine. Then he makes everything. He 17% usage, but goes 5 for 6 from 3 every game. Yeah, it's a lot of fun to roster him or not roster him.
Chris Albers wants to know how we feel about Paulo Banchero. He's just the guy for me on the slate. I don't really have too much else to add to this. He's in 13% of my lineup, so somewhere around even with the field. And there's other players I prefer around his price range, like Donovan Mitchell isn't all that much more expensive. I prefer Anthony Edwards. I prefer Jason Tatum. He's in play, but kind of like as a last man and not somebody I'm trying to actively get into lineups.
That is correct.
Will the Bill wants to know, how does Boucher project compared to other Toronto big men and Maxi Kleber? Yeah, so Chris Boucher, relative to this slate, does not project all that well. We have him in for fantasy points in the mid-teens. And as far as the other Toronto big men go, I assume he means Thaddeus Young and Jonte Porter. We have, of those guys, Thaddeus Young projected for the most fantasy points, just over 20. Jonte Porter is just under 20. And then Chris Boucher, it's 16. So that's the range of the projections for these guys. And now that Gary Trent is in, I have 2% of lineups with Porter. I have 7% of Thaddeus Young, but there's other value pieces that are way higher priorities than Toronto. It would have been different if Gary Trent was in, but if he was out, but he's in.
He is in, and that is unfortunate.
Chris Albers wants to know our thoughts on Joe Ingles. I think that Joe Ingles has a fairly capped upside.
Yep.
So if last man in, if you get to Joe Ingles, okay, I'm underweight to the field on Ingles. I'm underweight to the field on Jonathan Isaac for a couple of reasons. First off, the playing time is capped. I don't view either of these guys being potential 30-minute guys for today, which means that their ceiling is limited. The other thing to consider as well is think about the other players that are still questionable on the slate. We have Luka still questionable. We have Karis LeVert still questionable. And I would rather have the flexibility to make some swaps to my lineups than just jamming in Joe Ingles. So I've got 14% of Ingles. There are, worse points per dollar plays. There are better ones. But I think that Joe Ingles is picking up too much ownership when you consider what his upside is.
That is LeVert how I feel as well. Karis LeVert's in. Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Just got word. LeVert is in, so we've got that officially. Next super chat is from SMP 1993. Wants to know how much Luka is too much Luka. I think that Luka is a very good pay-up option today. The field is probably not going to be on, especially considering he's going to be questionable heading into lock. I really do like differentiating some lineups with Luka on the high end.
I do too.
Let's go into Discord and see what questions we have coming in here. And we've got, Sean Jeezy wants to know, Eric, who is Duke's doggy treat play of the night? The Duke players crushed last night.
Duke's players did?
No, all the Duke players.
They did.
Remember,
Oh,
we're getting
dude.
questions about
I
Duke
was
players.
at the game. Grayson Allen
That's what I'm saying.
was out of control. It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Well, he's had games like that in the past. He's played surprisingly well for Phoenix as well. Kind of been the piece they needed. And yeah, Eric Gordon comes in and just flame throws at the end of that game. We were going nuts. It was awesome times, awesome sauce. But who does Duke really like tonight? Who's his dog treat? Who is his treat? How about Anthony Davis against a Dallas front court that is basically Lively and Powell? That seems like an enjoyable experience. That feels like Duke's just Anthony Davis is going to also rip them to shreds.
So Duke has spoken. Then IC50 says, how much less of a play is Cornette than Pritchard or Hauser? So Pritchard and Hauser are much safer options for the slate. But as for Luke, it's going to depend what the starting lineup is for the Celtics. If Pritchard and if Hauser both start and Cornette comes off the bench, Cornette is still viable, but those other guys are way higher priority plays. So once that starting lineup comes out, we'll talk about it more in the Discord channel because we just don't have that information right now. But as of right now, I'm going to say it depends on what the starting lineup is. The next question is from Einstein. He wants to know, is LeVert somebody we have interest in a plus matchup with the Bucks? Not really.
Nope.
Yeah, I have LeVert in.
I will say I have more Isaac Okoro than I would like to say out loud right now.
Ooh, interesting. Clyde wants to know, who's our big... He says his biggest fade is Sam Hauser tonight, and his biggest stand is PJ Washington. Thoughts? Earlier in the day, I was getting to a chunk of PJ Washington, but then it fell by the wayside as more players started to get rolled out. Kind of speculated that was going to happen on the strategy show that Josh and I were doing. It's like, hey, we're getting to a bunch of these guys, and most likely none of them are going to be viable later as more players get rolled out. And that's kind of what ended up happening. Yeah. As far as fading Sam Hauser, if what Lee guessed before comes to fruition and Sam Hauser comes off the bench, I don't mind him as a fade. I'm assuming he starts right now, but my lineups will change dramatically if Sam Hauser comes off the bench.
I will definitely not want Sam Hauser.
Rico Rod 1980 wants to know my favorite options at each position on FanDuel. Point guard, Damian Lillard. Shooting guard is going to be Chris Middleton. Small forward, RJ Barrett. Power forward is Thaddeus Young as of now for FanDuel. And then center, Bobby Portis. And then if we go ahead and look at the next question, it is JEW favorite centers on FanDuel. Yeah, you want to play Bobby Portis in center. If not, Bam Adebayo, Brook Lopez, other viable center options. You have if you have Bobby Portis at power forward. But those are the guys to me. Portis, Bam, Brook Lopez, top centers for FanDuel purposes. Then we've got a 2v2 questions also here from Rico Rod. He wants to know Holiday and Ingles or Pritchard and D'Lo. Pritchard and D'Lo by a mile. Any Boucher love tonight on DK? No.
If he starts, but that's not going to happen because everybody hates him.
BJJJJJ wants to know, is 5% Hauser dumb? If he starts, that's not enough in my opinion.
Yeah, you need a lot more Sam Hauser in your life in that event.
And we've got Tim Lee here asking us for our favorite cash plays outside of Boston, the Milwaukee guys. If you don't want to play the Boston guys, which you should be playing all of them in cash, but then Bobby Portis, Damian Lillard, D'Angelo Russell, those are your best cash options that are not Celtics.
What Greg said.
Next question is coming to us from, let me double check super chats to make sure none of these came in late. Here, my bad. I didn't answer that. Two different builds. Could get Ant and Trent or Quickly and Naz Reid on FanDuel. I want Ant and Trent.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive Naz Reid I want 0 of.
And now we've got Kevin Cash App is asking us, how bad of a build is it to play Devin Vassell in single entry? Don't play Devin Vassell in single entry.
Please, for the love of God, don't play Devin Vassell in single entry.
And Einstein wants to know, is it a good idea to give Kyrie a boost with Luka news looming? I don't mind it. I'm just playing Luka as of now. So then if we, by the way, Luka on track to play. So there we go. Don't have to worry about it. Looks like Luka's going to be playing.
What timely news. It's beautiful when that happens.
And then Sick Mosh saying he's playing PJ Washington in cash. Is he playable? Not in cash. No. And then Eric M says, despite boosting Mitchell, I'm not getting to Mitchell in my top lineups. Is that a must for DK single entry? No, he's a very strong option. I'm overweight to Donovan Mitchell. I'm not going to tell you have to play him, I'm overweight to Donovan Mitchell, and he's not in my single entry lineup.
I just fixed all my Cleveland stuff, and I'm pretty positive I'm going to play Karis LeVert tonight.
All right. So
are you getting to any at all?
So we got a question about Karis LeVert before, and I went over. I have 2% of them, so not really.
Okay, just asking.
It's just opportunity cost. If he was
totally,
is this like as expensive as he's been all year with Mitchell in?
No, 6,400. Tag came down after last game. He was 6,700 last slate. He's played 35 minutes in competitive spots. They were up infinity points last time out. I don't know. I think I am playing Karis LeVert based on what his usage has been of late.
It's been higher. I don't think the
29, 25, either. 30, 33, 32.
Yeah, some of these even competitive games, though, we've seen him play like 26 minutes against the Spurs.
Just wanted to say one thing out loud that I didn't expect to show up in my lineups as I finished out everything from Cleveland. So wanted to throw it out there.
And Brunson will play today. That was expected. We got news before that he was on track to play. Final question here. And before we answer this one, it is a Prize Picks question. So I'm going to have to kick it to you for this, Eric.
Okay.
I want to shout out that today's the absolute last day for our Drive promo. So if you guys want to sign up for our NFL package for the rest of the season, all the way through the Super Bowl, you can sign up for less than $100 right now. And in addition to that, to get access to everything, our Sims, our Discord, contest generators, you can build lineups, you can simulate them. And that is going to be good for every single slate for the rest of the year through the Super Bowl for the NFL season. And then in addition to that, you get free access to the PGA event for this weekend. So we've got a PGA event that's going to be locking, like 14 hours from now or something like that. So get access to that through the weekend, which also is going to include Sims access for the showdown slates that are to come as well in the next few days. But Brian Peel, top 3 Prize Picks guys for tonight. What are you liking on Prize Picks, Eric?
Yeah, there's a couple of spots. Obviously, the revamped Toronto lines, they feel a little bit aggressive going up against Miami. I had literally talked about how much I liked 27.5 for Emmanuel Quickly in some of these spots for PRA. Now it's starting to be the inverse when you start talking about 32-33 in this spot. Again, people just want to have like concrete answers. Oh, I want it over. Oh, I want it under. But usually the truth lies in just what the number is relative to the chance of expectation. On Prize Picks, all you need to be worried about are expected win percentages. You want to get the most likely winners. And a lot of the ways you do that is you look at sharp books and you just basically cross-reference. One of my favorites that I've been looking at here as well, think that, you talk about Anthony Edwards being active here for this one. Mike Conley under 10.5 points. That's something that I have on a couple cards as well.
One final question here from Marquee Sports. Wants to know if we have any love for Dean Wade tonight. No, I do not think we want to be playing Dean Wade. And then also, starting lineup for the Milwaukee Bucks is Lillard, Beasley, Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez, and Jackson. So we've got Jackson Jr.
I thought he would.
Starting lineup.
Yeah, that doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot for me. Lee, we still have Lee. Yes. Do you have any reaction to Jackson? Is that going to be somebody that you don't have to say, hey, I'm going to play him in the lineups here right out of the gate, but like we've seen this before, no?
Yeah, so this happened exactly the last time that Giannis was out. Jackson started, played 16 minutes, and was absolute garbage. So I'm actually going to just take 1 minute off of Portis, like not a ton, and then I'll give Jackson like 20-ish minutes. Maybe he can play into a little bit more. But that just tells me that like Marshawn Beauchamp isn't a thing, just don't go there. I'm going to give him like 0 now. And then like Pat Connaughton is closer to like 23, 24.
Luke Cornett's starting for Lee on the way out the door. Let's go.
All right.
Lee,
Luke Cornett's starting.
Round the bases, Lee.
Come on.
Big, sexy,
that was
exotic
like the
player.
easiest call.
Big, sexy, exotic player in the front court. So guys, that is going to do it for us. Myself and Lee, we're going to be hanging out in Discord for the rest of the night. So
Lee for new,
updating some lineups.
Co-host.
What's that, Eric?
Nothing.
All right. So Eric's very excited about something. Probably there's another white guy in his starting lineup. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've not done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Peace out.